Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to our Points in the Paint podcast. Dave Flemming, Sean Farnham. As we talk WCC hoops, our show is, as always, presented by Hell of a Good Dip. We got a lot to get to tonight. This podcast will be released on Tuesday. Crazy week. Well, one of the wildest weekends of WCC hoops that I can remember just a few days ago. We have Malik Thomas from San Francisco, who maybe is the front runner for Player of the Year in the league. He's going to join us in a few minutes, and we're going to preview some big games coming up in just a couple days. Am I wrong in saying that, Sean, that this conference has taken a turn for the nutty?
It was a hell of a good week, full of a hell of a bunch of good games. Thank God we've got some hell of a good dip to enjoy it, because it was wild. I mean, if you would have told me before the start of this week, Santa Clara is going to lose to Loyola Marymount and then drop a century plus 3 in Spokane and get a win, I'd tell you you've lost your mind. But that's exactly what happened. And, you know, the Zags lose back-to-back games in this conference for the first time since 2014, according to my research. And my research is currently located in Spokane, so I feel like I've done pretty well there. But it's 2014, the last time they lost back-to-back games. And maybe the most important part about that is that neither one of them were to St. Mary's. You know, because that would be like kind of where you would think. Like St. Mary's has been the team that most consistently has challenged Gonzaga in this conference, and they weren't part of it this time. They're 2 games back. Everybody's 2 games back right now of St. Mary's. The Dons, technically speaking, 1 game back because they've played 2 additional games. But in the loss column, they're 2 games advantage over everybody else in this conference, as we're 6 to 8 games in, depending upon how many games you played. But it has been wild, and it has been inconsistent. We knew this was a possibility, right, Dave? I mean, because this is a conference. As we started this podcast a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the depth and the quality of teams inside the top 70, inside the top 75, same number of teams inside the top 35 as the ACC, and all of those conversations that we had. And when you have a conference that's deeper, when you have a conference that has many good teams, it tends to breed some inconsistency. And while we can point out to the WCC and say, okay, well, this might not be great because it could hurt maybe in metrics to try to get teams in the NCAA tournament, let's remember Tennessee went on the road to Vanderbilt and lost. And Vanderbilt's not necessarily one of those teams in the SEC that you're looking at going, hey, that's an NCAA tournament team at this point in time. And they beat a top 10 team in Tennessee. This happens in every single conference when you have depth, when you have talent, and the West Coast Conference should be viewed that way by national pundits.
All right, I want to make 2 points. Well, one, I would like to see, and look, one thing that you and I have done for years is focus on the regular season in this league because it's fun, because the players and the coaches and the schools care about it. The games feel big when we're there. We try not to be too obsessed with the postseason and who's so that's one thing. Like, I don't want to make it like the only important thing is teams getting in the NCAA tournament. But I would like to see some consistency because year after year we hear about this league. Well, the Zags or St. Mary's, you know, they just don't get tested week in, week out. It's different than in the other leagues. So now you have a year where they are getting tested week in and week out. So treat them like that. If you're going to say that for all these years leading up to this one, okay, then this year to me should be different. This year should be, this is a deep league where if you lose 4 or 5 games in conference play, that is not a blight. That's not like some massive failure. No, actually, that's an indication that you have been tested and pushed this year every weekend. So I hope there's some consistency in the way this thing gets evaluated when we're wrapping up and doing our last episode heading into the tournament.
Well, I'll tell you this. I think most of these teams right now are focused on that conference championship, though, and they know how important that is because, obviously, as we've talked about in the past, those top 2 seeds, the buys into the semifinals have proven to be very important when you do get to Vegas. I think there's some interesting storylines here, Dave, to look at. Let's start with St. Mary's because they're on top. St. Mary's is on top right now, but if you look at their schedule, it has been by far the lightest of any of the teams that are in the top half of the league. They haven't faced really any of those teams. Now they're about to go on a gauntlet of 8 straight games, I think, when I counted. 8 straight games against all of those teams, where you see San Francisco, you see Washington State, you see Oregon State, you see Gonzaga. And they're about to go on a full month of just game after game after game after game. They've built a little bit of a cushion here. They have some momentum, obviously. They've played very, very well. The efficiency in which they're playing. And Marshall Onis went over 1,000 career points this past weekend, and he's been sensational once again. The depth, they've had some guys step up and be able to produce consistently off the bench. Mikey Lewis, the freshman, is very talented. But as great as their defensive metrics have been so far in conference play, those metrics are about to get tested in a big-time way starting this week.
Yeah, so just to set the stage, if you're listening, if you're watching, and you don't have the standings in front of you. So St. Mary's is 6-0, only undefeated team. And you're right, there is separation. A lot of that has to do with the schedule, but there is. San Francisco, all alone in second place now. They've got 6 wins. They played 2 extra games. They're 6-2. Zags, Washington State, Santa Clara are all 5-2. Oregon State is 4-3. And LMU, look, they're 3-4. Are they going to be a factor in the conference title race? Probably not, but are they going to be a pain in the rear for teams that have to go down there, especially? Yes, they are. I mean, one other thing you and I get accused of every once in a while is focusing too much on Gonzaga. Well, we apologize over the years. They've been pretty important to talk about, but I am going to focus on them for a minute because you mentioned the 103 from Santa Clara. They lost on Thursday at Gill Coliseum against the Beavers. They gave up 97 in that one. So in one weekend, Gonzaga, 97 points allowed and 103 points allowed. Not great.
I'm not a math major, but I do believe that adds up to 200 points in 2 games.
200 points in a weekend. That doesn't happen in college hoops very often.
And you can say, well, boy, Santa Clara got hot. They hit, 17, 18 three-pointers, I think?
18.
18. All right, we'll run them off the line. Be there on the catch.
Yeah.
Communicate better on screens. Make sure you're not giving them space to knock down those shots. Force them to put the ball down on the ground. You dominated them inside the paint. You can't let them continue to be comfortable from beyond the arc. When you look at the best teams that Mark Few has had, they've always been able to defend at a very high clip. It has been well documented this team has not shot the ball at a very high clip from beyond the arc. They actually shot it better this weekend than they had been.
Yeah, and they need to solve that because you look at these box scores, the minutes off the bench are going down. They're not as deep as they need to be, and I think you can make a pretty strong correlation between not getting much from the bench and these defensive numbers. I mean, they need to solve that problem. They do, to be the best version of themselves. They do. All right, but look, I want to give some props to both Santa Clara and Oregon State. So I promise we're going to do that. We need to take our quick break. We're going to bring in Malik Thomas from San Francisco next. We'll talk to Malik. And then before we get to this week's games, we'll have a couple more thoughts from Sean on what's been going on in league. Sound good to you?
Sounds great to me because you know what? We talk about Gonzaga, but you also have to give credit to those 2 schools and just how significant a statement that was for both of those 2 schools this week in conference play and what that means for them moving forward when you look at their upcoming schedule.
I'm going to ask you a question. You can answer it later in the show. Has there ever been a player in history who's played 2 games in a weekend, in one of those games scored 0 points, 0, and 1 player of the week in conference? We don't know if it's going to happen, but Tyree Bryan is a candidate after he scored 0 against LMU and 35 in Spokane against the Zags. That's a weekend. So I'll ask you that later. We'll take a break and come back right after this. All right, welcome back to our Points of the Paint podcast. Dave Flemming, Sean Farnham, presented by Hell of a Good Dip. Gosh, this guy's had such a good year. We're happy to get a chance to catch up with Malik Thomas from San Francisco, who is a 4-time WCC Player of the Week. The Dons are all alone in second place in conference play. Malik, you had a good year last year, really good year last year. You have taken a big step forward here in this season. Top 15 scoring in the country, number 1 scorer in league play. How'd you do it?
First and foremost, all credit to my Lord and Savior. Without him, none of this would be possible. And then it just came from a long, hardworking summer. I dedicated this summer to changing my game and changing my lifestyle, my eating habits, my routines, and it just came with a lot of hard work and dedication for sure.
All right, let me jump in on that for the eating habits because many people may not know Dave Flemming changed his eating habits a couple years ago, and it's totally disrupted my ability to go on the road and enjoy a lot of meals with him. So, what specifically about your diet did you maybe take away, or did you look to add that is allowing your body? Because I do truly believe what you fuel your body with does impact its ability to perform at its best level, and clearly you've been at an elite level.
Yes. I have to give credit to my girlfriend. She cooks every meal for me. So I think the home cooked meals have been a very significant part of my game. It just fuels my body with non-processed food. So I'm always feeling energized and ready to go. So just credit to her for cooking every meal for me, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So yeah, just changing my eating habits for sure. I've grown up getting home cooked meals by my mom. So I think that was a big part because last year was a lot of door dashing for sure.
You haven't go vegan though, like I have you, Malik?
No, no, no. I can't. I love steak. I love steak. I love chicken, fish. I love meat. So
Good
it's
for you. Keep enjoying life.
how do you like being vegan though? How is that?
You know what? I don't miss the stuff that I thought I'd miss as much as I did. Plus, now I'm taking all the pills anyway, so my cholesterol's gone down. I'm feeling pretty good.
That's
Yeah,
nice.
but by the
That's
way, but by the
that's
way,
great.
ask me that question because how do I feel about Dave being vegan? Is that like half the restaurants we used to eat at on the road to the WCC we can't go to anymore?
Oh no. I know they're expanding though for sure for the vegan option because I feel like more and more people are going vegan. I know one of my old coaches went vegan out of nowhere too. So I know you guys are expanding for sure.
Of course, you live in San Francisco, like, that's a good place. You're do you like that part of playing for the Dons is being in a big city? And obviously, San Francisco is one of the most famous cities in the world. How do you like being in the
Oh,
city?
for sure. I love the city. There's so many things to do out here. The food is amazing. Coming from LA, I'm used to the big city life, but San Francisco has been a little more chill and like relaxing and a lot of things to do, like go to the Golden Gate Park and go see the bridge or go to Sausalito. It's just been a great experience for sure. Outside of playing basketball, just get out and see the beautiful nature for sure.
You transferred to USF, and when you look back on that process, what was it about the Dons that made it the right fit for you? And what about the style of play has worked so well for you, given the fact that you continue to score at such an elite level, 11 games over 20 points already this season, multiple 30-plus point games, a 35-point game in there as well.
Yeah. When I entered the transfer portal, I feel like San Francisco was the first team to draw my attention as far as calling a Zoom meeting with me. And credit to the coaching staff, they had a elite plan for me to get better and to get back to playing uh, a loose style of basketball. Coach Chris over there at USF, he just lets his players rock. And I saw that previous years with Khalil Shabazz and uh, Robert. Those two guards average both 17 plus, and they just play like a very up tempo, fast paced, guard heavy, split action type of game that really fits my style of play. Um, and he just trusts all of his guys. He recruits everybody that can pass, dribble, and shoot. So it just makes it very fun to play for a coach that believes in you and instills that confidence in you.
So you changed your diet. What about your game did you change?
Over the summer, I felt like I worked on my pace. My pace was a big thing. My pace and my footwork. Just learning how to play at my pace, slowing down, seeing the game, making the right reads, not being so tunnel vision. Seeing my pick and roll options or seeing who's open. If I drive to the basket and draw two defenders and see the kick out and the back action, I just felt like diving into a lot of film this summer has really helped me slow down the game for me. And just staying consistent with my jump shooting, shots off the dribble, shots off the catch, just learning how to, use all of my tools in my bag for sure and just working on that and staying consistent with all that.
Is there an NBA player that you like to watch, or that you kind of observed as you went through that process and were like watching film of them saying, "I'd like to add that to put that in my bag as well"?
For sure. I feel like watching the footwork side of things, a more modern player right now with Jalen Brunson. I dived on into his film. Playing an explosive game. Usually, I looked into Donovan Mitchell and Devin Booker. Those are two guards that are like very elite at their position and elite at creating space and drawing two defenders and making the right play. And yeah, I feel like those two players, obviously, one of my favorite players of all time, Kobe Bryant, my favorite player of all time. I worked on all of his footwork, all of his post fade stuff, all of his counter moves. I looked at that over the summer as well. So just diving onto those 3 to 4 players has been for sure good.
Couple last minutes with Malik Thomas of having just a fantastic season for San Francisco. Sean and I laughed last year. We were at one of your shoot-arounds. Maybe it was even at the WCC tournament. And Gurlifson cranks up like the old school R&B. Like, and most teams like maybe let the captains or the players pick, some of the playlists. And your head coach, he wanted to listen to he wanted to flash back to his high school days.
Yeah.
Still doing that?
Yeah, he is. He is. We were playing. Me and my teammates were just laughing about this, but he was playing. We were playing at Pacific, and it was some old school song that was like, I forget. I need to see what it was talking about, but it was an old school song, and we were in a timeout, and it was a pretty. I think we were starting to separate a little bit from Pacific, and we were like, we tried a rhythm and all of that, and then he couldn't help himself but to nod his head and say like, "Oh, this is one of my favorite jams that I grew up on back in the day." So yeah, he still has great taste in music for sure.
That keeps you loose if your coach is willing to do that in the huddle in the middle of a game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean I think that really like it was like the first game of the New Year's, the jitters, first road game in WCC play. So I think that made us like, loosen up a little bit and have fun and play with that swagger for the rest of that game. And we ended up coming out with that W.
I know you're focused on success of the team, and you guys have obviously gotten off to a great start here in WCC play, and you put yourself well positioned to make have a really strong second half to league play as we get ready to close out the month of January. But I do want to ask you an individual goal, because this conference, for a long time we thought, okay, you had to play at Gonzaga to be an NBA player. And now all of a sudden you saw the Aussies. You had to be Australian and go to St. Mary's. Okay, cool. Then all of a sudden you got Jalen Williams, and then you got Brandon Pajewski, and then oh my gosh, last year San Francisco saw a guy get his name called in Jonathan Bobo. How much does that open your eyes to the possibilities of your future, given the fact of how well you're playing and the exposure that you get for playing in a conference like the WCC?
Yes, for sure. Shout out to my roommate Jonathan Mobo for being the first guy to get his name called in a very long time, and it just instills a confidence in us that like anybody can have a good year, and anybody can, if you put in the right work and you have the right amount of faith and dedication to this sport, that anybody can make it to the NBA. So I just feel like the WCC is a conference that is consistently putting people on notice, competing with Gonzaga, St. Mary's. Now we have Washington State and Oregon State. I just feel like we're very slept on, but people are starting to really take notice of how great of a conference this is. I feel like this is the best conference on the West Coast. And I just feel like it's a blessing to see everything coming along.
All right, before we let you go, Malik, this podcast comes out on Tuesday. Thursday, you guys get the Gales. So big game coming up against St. Mary's. You've played against them. They have a lot of returning players, some new players, but with Randy Bennett and that program, the style stays the same. What's it like to play against St. Mary's? What do you guys got to do?
Oh, we're going into a battle Thursday night. Going into Moraga, we're excited. We got back to playing our type of basketball with Pepperdine and Oregon State, playing a high-paced game and getting back to defending at a high level. So I think we're we're all excited. We're all very confident going into Moraga.
Love it. Love it. I think it was Ja Rule, by the way, last year that kinda got me going with, Gurlifson. Like, I does that count as old school anymore? I don't know.
I don't
I
know if
don't
that's
know.
even count as being that shouldn't even be mentioned. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. No.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not into the old school yet. Sooner or later, I'll be onto the older playlist in my music collection.
Thomas, keep it up, and really fun watching you play, and, Sean and I will see you in person here coming up soon, can't wait.
Yes. Thank you for having me. You guys have a great one.
Awesome. Malik Thomas with us. We'll come back with more right after this. All right, we're back on our Points in the Paint podcast covering WCC hoops. Dave Flemming, Sean Farnham, brought to you by Hell of a Good Dip. What better for football playoff season? Hell of a good dip. Malik Thomas, man, that was fun to talk to him. He's having a terrific year. I think you said it. Maybe you didn't say it exactly there, Sean. For a long time, it's almost been assumed, not just going to the NBA, but if you want to be a conference player of the year in this league, you got to play for one of those two programs because they've dominated the standings in the WCC for so long. He's got a great chance to be that at the end of this year. Great chance.
He really does, and I think that he's the leader as we stand 8 games in for him, just based on his production, his efficiency in which he's played with, and the fact that the Dons are winning games. At the end of the day, you know, it's really hard to be a player of the year when you're on a team that's at the bottom of the standings. But when your team is at the top and is trying to compete for a championship and is in that discussion, is a top 3, top 4 in particular this season, I think that's where the Dons have to be, and his numbers have to continue to be good, and he can find himself in that mix.
All right, a couple more teams to sort of shout out before we look ahead to big games this weekend. I mentioned Tyree Bryant. What a wild, sort of weird weekend he had. 0 points Thursday, 35 at the kennel on Saturday.
7 threes, Dave. 7.
7. I mean, to your point, like, it's sort of hard to believe that the Zags let that happen, but give Brian credit. Santa Clara's last road win against a ranked team was Steve Nash against Jason Kidd in college. That's the last time that Santa Clara before Saturday had beaten a ranked team on the road. I mean, that's a lifetime ago.
It is, and, you know, you look at that game too, and Brian obviously 13 of 21 shooting, just great efficiency, you know, high volume, but great efficiency within that volume. Like, right, they could not turn his water off. They could not deny him the ball. His teammates did a great job of getting him the ball in his hands and putting him in situations where he felt like he could attack and be successful. He finished with 35. Adama Alpha Ball, like on any other game, we'd be like, wow, he got 20 against Gonzaga. It was like, yeah, it's just a complete afterthought because of what Brian was able to accomplish. I think as a team, just across the board, the percentages, 54% shooting as a team from the field, 47% from 3. You know, their worst shooting percentage was their free throw line at 68%. But they did so many good things in that game. It's almost comical because then you look on the other side and you're like, well, Ryan Nembhard had 16 and 15 with only 1 turnover. He had 15 assists and only 1 turnover, and they lost. Like, I mean, it was an unbelievable offensive barrage, and in particular, when you think about the fact that they were plus 24 from the three-point line in points, from that one stat alone. And to me, that's why I look at defensively and say, hey, you got to run them off the line. They didn't. They allowed them to continue to get good looks, and they continue to make them. And so there are nights, and I've been in those games. You saw one at Stanford my freshman year when we lost by 48. A very good UCLA team that, by the way, went on to win the conference by like 5 games, and we went to the Elite Eight that year. But the Stanford Cardinal and Brevin Knight and Arthur Lee were like drop kicking threes in from the other side of the court. We could not figure it out. And before we even looked up, the game was over. That wasn't the case here because this, to me, what the true test was, down the stretch of the game, the Zags made a run. They pushed. And Santa Clara always had that kind of answer to keep, like, it got close, they pushed them further away. Got close again, they pushed them further away. And to me, that's the mental toughness that I really liked about what Santa Clara was able to accomplish over the weekend.
You know, a quick thought on, Oregon State. Look, they're 4-3. They've played a hard schedule so far, but when you beat the Zags at home and you have the celebration afterwards, and Wayne Tinkle says it's a reward for everything that's gone on in the last couple years where they've struggled on a bunch of different fronts. Felt good for the Beavers on Thursday.
Oh, big time. And you talk about, Michael Ratai and just how well he's played all season long, but he had 29-7 in that game, followed it up with 18-6 in that loss to San Francisco that followed it. But for Gonzaga, that game against Gonzaga, that's a regional significant win, for them. It's a statement win, obviously, for Oregon State. They still have never lost. It's amazing. They have never lost to Gonzaga.
Never. They're like 13-0 all time against the Zags.
But they hadn't played since 1996. So then you go, well, there's this great run and there's great Zag teams in there. But then here we are, boom, they got it done. Like Wayne Tinkle has really been a hard luck coach. And I hate saying that. And I know he would never make that excuse. And we already had him on the podcast to start things off here in our first episode. But, he had that roster and they went on that great run to go all the way to the Elite Eight inside the bubble. They never really were able to build momentum off of that. Then he had some really good young talent, and they went out and recruited really, really well. And then those guys jumped ship, as so many do in the transfer portal, with the uncertainty of the conference and the decline of the Pac-12. Like, everything was kind of in the air. What impressed me most about Oregon State this year is, yes, they defended a pretty high clip overall. They gave up a little bit more points here in conference play. But I go back to WCC Media Day, and I sat there with a couple of their players. And then I sat down and by the way, both of them transfers. I said, so what's the most important thing for you this season? And they said, we want to win games for Coach. Coach is a great coach. He's a really good guy. And we want to win games for him. And I'm looking at these guys. I'm like, you've been on campus for 3 months.
You've known him for 10 minutes.
Like, what are you talking about? But that's Wayne Tinkle. I mean, that's the connectivity. This man really cares about his team. And you go back to his background of who he played for. Like, you played for Mike Montgomery and Stu Morrill. Like, those, by the way, are two great coaches. Not good coaches in college basketball. Those are great coaches. Stu Morrill has never received the respect, I think, nationally that he deserved for his success as a head coach. But Mike Montgomery clearly has, and deservedly so. But those are the guys you learn from. And those are the guys that influenced how you do things. And when you learn from those two guys, you're learning how to do it the right way. And you're doing it with conviction and a moral compass and a backbone and some character. And to see this team fight, I think it really excites me that they got that win. A sold-out crowd, the significance of having a sold-out crowd at Oregon State, what that does for them, not even just this year, but moving forward. And you mentioned it, their schedule, how daunting it's been at the top. And it's important that you realize they got Gonzaga twice this year. They get St. Mary's twice this year. They have Washington State coming up in a couple weeks. They got Pepperdine. Then it goes Santa Clara, Gonzaga, Washington State, St. Mary's. Then there's a stretch of games after that where things lighten up a little bit based on the standings right now, where they could maybe gain some momentum into their final two games against San Francisco and St. Mary's and try to see where they fit in. Can they get a bye all the way to the quarterfinals? Because I think this is a team, as they continue to gel with chemistry and continue to learn how to play with you, because there are so many new components, that they'll get better at the offensive end. They do get stuck sometimes, Dave, there, and they allow opponents to go on runs on them, and then they've got to catch up. If they can avoid that, I think that would really help them, obviously, down the stretch.
All right, final couple minutes here. No games Tuesday, no games Wednesday in the league this week, so it's a little different than how it has been. Everything's concentrated Thursday, Saturday. Let me just throw 4 games out there. You can give me the one that you are most looking forward to. So you mentioned San Francisco. We talked to Malik about it. Going to Moraga to play St. Mary's, the first real true challenge for the Gales in league play. Washington State that same night in Santa Clara. That's a big game. I mean, Santa Clara, they're trying to build some momentum. We talked to Herb Sendek. That's a big one. Santa Clara then goes to Corvallis on Saturday to take on those Beavers, and St. Mary's goes to Pullman to take on Washington State. So the Gales are going to get tested unlike they have so far in conference play.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest point for me is just seeing St. Mary's. Okay, you've gotten off to a good start. You've had some great success early. Your point differential's been great. You've been able to rack that up. That's really helped the net ranking overall. I think helping the national perception of who they are as a team. But now it's time to really go to work. And Randy Bennett has talked to his team and will continue to talk to his team. This San Francisco team is dangerous. Now, let's say Malik Thomas goes, hey, we got back to who we are, playing fast. Well, hit the brakes because you're not playing fast in Moraga, so you're going to have to execute at their tempo. You're not going to speed up Randy Bennett's team. You can't. So there's various ways you can try to shorten their shot clock and not allow them to run their stuff, and you can extend out pressure, and they rarely turn it over. They rarely have self-inflicted wounds. But I think if you're looking to go in and say, hey, we're going to play fast for St. Mary's, that's probably not going to be the best plan of attack. You're going to take early shots, and then you're going to be stuck defending for 30 seconds. And you're going to run through 8,000 screens, and you're going to get hit on all of them. But I think this is a big, big week for St. Mary's to kind of solidify. I don't want to say that it's a false 6-0 by any stretch of imagination. You still win those games. But if you want to solidify yourself as the top dog and continue to create that separation and that break, then you've got to take care of business this week at home and then on the road against Washington State. Because going up to Pullman is not an easy trip. It'll be the first time that they go up there and experience that. And I think that that's going to be a big, big thing that we're going to be talking about next week is how this week goes for the Gales.
If they go 2-0 this week, St. Mary's is firmly in control. With still a lot of games to be played, but a 2-0 week puts St. Mary's in real control of this league. And I'm going to circle one player, Sean, before we sign off. I was happy to see Mitchell Saxon. Gales only played one game this last weekend. It's not been a huge year for Mitchell. Now, he's been around forever. We know what kind of player he is, a really good player. He's had a lot of quiet games. He went 5 for 8. He scored 13. They don't need 30 from Mitchell Saxon. But I think especially against a team like San Francisco where maybe you say, okay, he's got an advantage inside, to me, that's a good sign for them. I'm looking to see what he does this weekend.
Yeah, offensive rebounds going to continue to be key, and I think that's where his impact is. Whether it's tipping those rebounds out or grabbing them himself, St. Mary's has done a really good job on the offensive glass. I think that is an area that they have to try to dominate in this week. I do want to give some love also to Stan Johnson. LMU 2 wins last week. Obviously, the win against Santa Clara, a 3-point win at home, followed it up with a win against San Diego. For a program like them right now and trying to build consistency, they had a gauntlet of a stretch off the top at San Francisco, at Washington State, Oregon State at home, but they won. Gonzaga, at St. Mary's. I mean, that is a brutal start to the schedule for LMU. And to your point that you mentioned earlier, Dave, is while they probably likely will not figure in the conference championship, I think there's wins to be had. This team is fighting right now, and they're scrapping a little bit here. And just as much as I mentioned, there's like a little soft spot in the schedule. They could end up rattling these 2 wins off. And I look at the next 3 games before they have to play in Spokane and go, those are winnable games. Those are winnable games. Now, it's hard because Washington continues to do big-time things for Pacific. Had a near triple-double this week. All right, and that's going to be a tough game at Pacific. But you got Portland and then San Diego after that. If you go and win 5 straight games, all of a sudden now how you feel about LMU changes, right? And how the people in that locker room, the confidence they have as they head into a stretch right after that of Gonzaga and San Francisco back-to-back.
We need more time on this show, obviously. We've run out of time. We have more to talk about. We'll just have to save it for next week. What do you think?
That sounds good. I love the crew neck, by the way. I do want to tell you, I love the crew neck.
I got all my new WC doing this podcast. I got all this new gear. I like the crew neck. You could go, I went polo shirt underneath. You could go just pure sweatshirt. It would work both ways.
I was going to go like Bill Belichick with mine and just cut off the sleeves. What do you think?
I want to see it next week. Can we do that, please? It'd be a fun weekend of hoops. Sean, thanks for doing it.
No worries. I love coming on here every single week. And I do think that there is a lot of validity right now to the thought process of what we talked about at the start of the very first podcast. This conference is deeper than it's ever been. It is very well positioned. While it's not all about the NCAA tournament, a lot of times that's what people judge conferences on. I think this conference is going to have a great race for the conference championship. I don't think this thing is closed already just because it's a 2-game lead for St. Mary's. There's going to be some losses and there's going to be some lumps that happen. Who's able to be the most consistent is going to be key. leading us into Las Vegas. And to me, I always look. You have very few chances to win a championship in the season. Usually in your non-conference tournament, your regular season title, your conference tournament, and then the NCAA tournament. And all of these coaches right now, and how jumbled up it is, there's a lot of teams right now in late January that are looking, going, we got a chance. If we did this, this, and this, we could be the #1 seed by the time they get to Las Vegas. And I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, well said. Thanks to Hell of a Good Dip for Sean Farnham, Dave Flemming. We'll talk to you next week.